2 weeks from the draft on Thursday, and Baker Mayfield is not going anywhere until when? I mean, I got the sense.
Yeah.
I got the sense when Matt Ryan took that final seat in Indianapolis and the game of musical chairs sat Mariota in Atlanta that this was going to go past the draft, and it sure looks like it. What's the timing on this?
I mean, I think it's sort of going to come down to if Baker wants to force the issue, and I think one thing he can do to force the issue if he desires to do that, and I've said this a few different places, Rich, like I think it like show up to the off-season program, and like that in itself, like if you show up, like that becomes a problem for the team. They just want you to go away, so maybe he shows up to the off-season program and he tries to force the issue. I think this is really going to come down to Cleveland's willingness to take on money and how much money they're willing to take on, because I don't think Baker has zero value across the league. Like I think he's still seen as sort of a back half of the NFL starter. Like I don't think he's seen as this guy who only can be a backup. But there's no, like you said, the music is sort of stopped and the chairs are full. And so, if somebody was going to take him on as a reclamation project and say, okay, we're going to roll the dice on him for 1 year and he's going to be our starter, then they may be willing to pay the $18.858 million. But lacking that and seeing where the opportunity might be to come in and maybe just compete for a job, no one's willing to pay that amount of money. So as much as anything else, it's going to come down to how much money the Browns are willing to take on. And, and then finding the right suitor for him. I don't think Carolina is very interested right now. My understanding is Detroit's not really talking about it either. Seattle over the last couple of weeks has stuck out to me as the one where if the Browns are willing to take on some of the money, then Seattle can take another swing at the quarterback position at replacing Russell Wilson by putting Baker Mayfield in a competition with Drew Lock. And remember, taking multiple swings is how they found Russell Wilson in the first place, so it sort of fit with who they are,
right,
and how they do business to that position.
Or they covet somebody in the draft, and they want to make sure that if they don't get the guy, then they'll revisit this, right? It may not just be, even if
possible too, and that's 100%. That's the way it works this time of year too, Rich. You know this. In a lot of cases, teams will go into the draft with needs. But as you know, the free agent market's the needs market, right? The draft's supposed to be the value market where you're not supposed to press needs. And so sometimes teams do come out of the draft with needs unfulfilled. And certainly you could see where, Pittsburgh, for example, right? Now you keep hearing Pittsburgh connected to Malik Willis. Let's say Malik Willis goes in front of Pittsburgh, they don't get a quarterback, but they still want to bring in somebody to compete with Mitch.
Right.
I don't know if Cleveland would trade him in division and eat money to do that. But, maybe Pittsburgh would be the sort of team that would be set up to make that call if they come out of the draft without another quarterback.
And
I certainly see what you're saying, where getting past the draft could smoke out a few more suitors.
Yeah, and then there's Garoppolo out there whose place on the roster appears to be affecting Deebo Samuel's Instagram account, right? After the Stephon Diggs signing and Garoppolo still being on the roster, that's cash they could give to Deebo and or Bosa, if not both, right? What's the deal there?
Yeah, and it sort of does work to stop up business a little bit, and what the Niners could do with, some more cap space, like you said, two foundation pieces there in Bosa and Deebo, who were drafted 3 years ago, that they could take care of. The situation with Garoppolo is a little different, though. I really do think Jimmy would have a starting job right now if it hadn't been for the shoulder surgery. I think somebody would have taken that swing on him. I think the issue you have now with Jimmy, because of the shoulder issue, is can you count on him to be what he's been the last few years when you get to September and October? And because he's only under contract for one more year, you're by definition acquiring him for 2022. So say you're Carolina, right? People's jobs are on the line in Carolina. And I do think there are people in that building that like Jimmy. Do you trade for Jimmy knowing he's going to miss the entire spring? He's not going to be throwing again until late June, early July. And then even then you may think that he's going to be okay, but that's sort of an unpredictable thing. Is he going to be full go in training camp? And you're trying to put in a new offense, right? With Ben McAdoo there. So there are all these things that sort of the shoulder complicates. And, if everybody's fighting for their job, then it becomes a little bit more difficult to kind of wrap your head around the idea of really going all in on somebody like Jimmy. And so I think with Jimmy, it's really more than anything else the shoulder that's complicated things. I do think that there are teams out there that look at Jimmy and say that guy could be a really good starting quarterback for us if healthy. The problem is he's not healthy right now.
Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.